The referees played a hand in this game more so than many thought. This is Sam Njoku, host of the Ravens Talk podcast. And unfortunately for Ravens fans, the referees unfortunately cost the Ravens big time here.
And I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. And while that certainly was the case, the Ravens also just had multiple miscues, poor execution, poor play calling, and a lot more that also fed into the result of this loss for them. And now they're in an even tougher spot than they were before. We talk about that and more coming up on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
Hello. We are here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam is figuring out his technology issues, so I'm Kevin Oestreicher. You back, Sam? You ready?
I'm back. I'm back.
All right.
The mute button got kind of sticky over there, but yeah.
Oh, man.
Again, thanks again, guys, for joining us here at the Ravens Talk, Ravens Squad Show, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. There you go. I am Sam Njoku, joined as always with Kevin Oestreicher. Q is in M&T Bank Stadium right now doing some interviews, so he'll be joining us as soon as he is done there. But as many Ravens fans know, the Ravens lose to the Steelers 27-22. Lots of factors to decide that outcome. None more so controversial than the role the refs played in this contest. And we'll touch on that, as well as whether or not the division title is still attainable for the Baltimore Ravens, even though the Ravens are now one game behind the Steelers and have that tiebreaker in the hands of the Ravens and the hands of the Steelers, considering they just defeated the Ravens 27-22. We'll also touch on whether or not changes could be on the horizon for this team, whether or not the Ravens, fail to make the postseason, fail to win the division. Could there be some changes in the horizon, some that many expect, some maybe we don't expect? We'll touch on that in a little bit. Just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Kevin, we watched your games. We were disappointed with the outcome, but nothing may be more frustrating than the role that the refs played in this contest. Isaiah Likely touchdown grab, not really a touchdown. The interception that could have been if Aaron Rodgers didn't have two knees down. Did he have full, control? Did he make the football move that, Isaiah Likely had to make? None of that. I guess a lot of things to be talked about here, but the fact of the matter is the Ravens did, in fact, lose, but the referees, in my opinion, did have something to say about this outcome.
Yeah. Again, I think two things can be true. I talked about this on the Instant Reaction show I did. The refs had a big part to play in this game, but the Ravens also didn't play well enough to win it. You never want to have a game come down to the referees. And I think that, the Ravens, whether it be their slow start, some of the execution issues they had, some of the play calling blunders I thought that they had in this game, it was difficult. But even despite the fact the Ravens didn't play well enough, in my opinion, it doesn't take away that you did have, like you said, the Isaiah Likely and Buchanan on the Andrews or on the Rodgers, interception that wasn't, and the Travis Jones play, and just calls all across the board that you're just kind of like, okay, well, you have a rule book, and the NFL is saying, well, on that Likely play, like the football move, but wasn't he extending the football out? Like, isn't that a football move? And all of a sudden now you need 3 feet in the NFL to have it be a catch. And do they want order of operations? Like, it is crazy that we're in the year 2025 after going through like the Des Bryant debacle all those years ago with him in Dallas and, a couple of other moments. The Steelers actually had a play similar to this in week 4 that was ruled a touchdown. So, like, what's a catch? Why are we in the year 2025? We don't know what a catch is still. And it's in those moments in the game, those big time moments that, yes, those plays had major impacts, but when you start slow, and I've said this for a long time, Sam, in the Todd Monken era, it's like this team either starts extremely fast and then just like fizzles out, or they start really slow and they come back, but it's not enough. Over the course of the year, remind me if I'm wrong and there was a game, Sam, but I don't think we've seen like a wire to wire game where we've said like, man, the Ravens played really well for the entirety, full 60 minutes of the game. I legitimately don't think there's been one. Looking back at their wins, maybe that Cleveland game in week 2, but other than that, like, even that game was a little dicey in the first half before the Ravens pulled away in the second. So, yeah. again, I might be wrong. I might be overlooking a game. And that Chicago game was impressive, but even still, I mean, maybe it was that game with Tyler Huntley, the closest thing the Ravens had to that. I don't know, but it's frustrating because, the Ravens put themselves in position to have multiple chances to win the game. And while they didn't execute, I mean, look, Lamar taking a sack on the last play of the game and having that, like, that was, refs didn't do anything about, like, that wasn't the refs' fault. The fact that Rashad Bateman dropped an easy first down / touchdown, the referees didn't have any influence on that. Lamar throws an interception, Daniel Falele gets blown by, Ravens can't get a sack on Aaron Rodgers, make him look. I mean, what year are we in 2015 secretly here, Sam? It's looking like prime Aaron Rodgers out there moving around. So I think that it's okay to do two things. It's okay to say the refs had an influence on the game, and it's okay to say that the Ravens didn't play well enough in the first place to win it.
Exactly. And I'm not making excuses for the Ravens. I'm not saying that if the referees didn't, technically speaking, if the referees didn't make those calls, the Ravens probably win. But I don't put the sole reason for the Ravens' misfortunes on the referees. I think this is a very winnable game from the onset. And I think that the Ravens didn't come to play in this game. And I think that they underestimated their opponent a little bit. And they also looked ill-prepared. But I got to say that those referees, man, the stripes were definitely involved in this contest. Whether or not you agree that was a catch or not, whether or not you agree Aaron Rodgers had full possession of the ball before, seeing that he was down by contact. Strange. And John Harbaugh did talk about that after the game. He was very miffed by it. I think he was more so miffed by the Aaron Rodgers interception more so than the Isaiah Likely drop. Once again, Isaiah Likely failing to secure the ball in the end zone, especially considering that Mark Andrews, who didn't have a catch in this contest. Maybe he had one that I missed, but don't think he had a catch in this contest. Since that extension happened, all eyes were on Isaiah Likely. Looked like he was going to have a big game, but he definitely still was unable to come down when it mattered most. And what would be your assessment of Isaiah Likely and his struggles holding on to the football? Do you think that is on him, especially this last one, or do you think it's just unfortunate circumstances?
I mean, I don't really blame him for the touchdown that wasn't here in this game. I mean, obviously the fumble was bad. That was on him, but I'm not going to blame Likely for this one. I mean, even like I'm just continuing to watch this replay from every angle I can find. And is a football move not him extending his leg to take the third step? He's not he 2 feet stop, just stand still. He was extending the ball and doing that. So, I mean, it was a good play from Joey Porter Jr. to knock the ball away. I think that's what I'm going to kind of chalk it up to there, but it should have been a touchdown. That's my thought process. So the NFL and, Gene Steratore talked about it, who's a CBS correspondent, former ref. And he said, all right, the third move wasn't established, but I think there are two things you can point to as a football move, because why is a football move just cutting or turning your body or doing something why can't it be in the act? Because again, it was very close between Likely getting his third foot down and not getting his third foot down. So if you're in the move of making that third step, I mean, I've said it, Sam, to your point and to your question, Likely has been pretty loosey-goosey with the ball at times over the course of his career. But in this particular instance, I'm not going to pin that on Isaiah. I mean, I hate to bring this up, but it's almost like the Lee Evans play, where it's just it was a great play by, who was it? Sterling Brown or whoever. I can't even remember who the corner was that made the play. Sterling Moore, maybe. But it's kind of like great play by Sterling Moore, bad play by Lee Evans to not hold on to the ball. With Isaiah, it's kind of in that same spot where yes, I'm fortunate Isaiah didn't hold on to the ball, but also it was a good play as well. So I think both guys, not great that Isaiah couldn't hold on the ball, but a good play by the corner to break it up. I think it's the same thing with Lee Evans, where obviously not a great play by Lee Evans to not hold on to the ball there. He can't do that in that situation, but also it was a good play by the corner to break it up. So, I think in this instance, I'm not too torn up about that aspect of it. I'm more so how is he not rewarded with a touchdown on that play where there were so many? It felt like every single big call that was close went against the Ravens in this game. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, I agree. It felt like, we're just getting things going. Oh, that looks a little bit off. What's going to happen? And the refs one-sided, went ahead and went with the Steelers. There was one challenge that the Ravens did have in the beginning of the game where the refs did agree with John Harbaugh. But after that, it was just felt like it was all anti-Ravens. That, returned to start this 2-minute warning to give the Ravens a chance. Holding the call brought the Ravens back. So a lot of things went against the Ravens. I'm not saying those calls were wrong, but I'm just saying the calls did play a huge part in the Ravens being pushed back, unfortunately, and falling to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are now 7-6. The Ravens 6-7, and needing huge games against the Patriots, the Packers, the Bengals, who stomped them on Thanksgiving, who fell short to the Buffalo Bills, and then the Steelers one more time to close out the week. So the season. So this is going to be very interesting to see what the Ravens do. What would be your assessment of Lamar Jackson in this game? Because Lamar, much maligned the last 4 weeks, looked like he wasn't healthy enough. These last 4 weeks didn't really do much in terms of reaching the end zone. His legs weren't there. This time, I think I saw a little bit of juice to his step, a little bit more certainty. Not 100% the guy he was these last few years, but certainly a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, this does come out with a loss for him, but I think he played a little better. What would be your assessment of Lamar in this game as opposed to the last 4 weeks of the season?
Yeah, I mean, the bar was pretty low, but I do think he played better than what we had seen. And again, like the stat line wasn't like anything to write home about. It was 19-35 for 219, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I did like how he was using his legs on some of these plays as well, and how the Ravens were making it an active point to, have him do that. So I thought that was really good. He had that throw to Derrick Henry that was a little short on that screen-ish play that I thought could have really broken out. But again, like, not every incompletion was his fault either. I mean, you had Zay Flowers catch a ball out of bounds where he was wide open. You had, obviously the touchdown that would have looked nice on Lamar's stat sheet. You have the Rashad Bateman drop that would have been an easy first down / touchdown. That was one. So again, like, not great in terms of completions versus incompletions, but again, at least from what we saw from him in the offense over the last 3 weeks, and this is my hope at least, that if there's any silver lining in this game, and I'll tell you, it's really hard to think this way because just how frustrating the season has been. But if there's any silver lining that I'm trying to take away from this game, if I'm trying to be positive, I'm going to say that hopefully the offense found something in the second half there, because it looked a lot better in the second half than it did in the first half. But again, there were still some things they have to work on. And like I've said over and over again, Sam, your strengths get you into the playoffs, but weaknesses eliminate you. And it just seems like the holes on this roster are so glaring. I know we haven't talked about the O-line yet, but Daniel Falele getting blown by. I know Tracy Wolfson reported that there was frustration on the Ravens sideline, and that Lamar and Falele had a conversation, and Zay Flowers got in there. So I don't really know what's going on right now with this team, and with Lamar, it's just like, hopefully he just stacks together better performances. He definitely did look, I think, have a little bit more juice in this game than we saw both in the Gist game and the Cincinnati game. But, wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. I think there's context behind his performance as well. But, for the Lamar that we have come to know, it's 4 straight games of underwhelming performances based off the player we know Lamar Jackson can be. But again, injuries, offensive line, drops, whatnot. And obviously for him, missing some throws and the interception as well. There's always holistic context to it with everything involved.
Yeah, agreed. I think that the one thing I take away from it, similar to you, is this looks better. I came into this fourth quarter thinking maybe Lamar Jackson can bring this team back, and he almost did, obviously. But it was nice to see Lamar Jackson be the guy that could potentially put a dagger on the game, or could potentially push the ball down the field without worrying that he's going to make that critical error that he made early on in the game. So that is a positive that Ravens fans could take with them as they prepare for this daunting 4-game stretch. The Ravens having, I believe, the second or third toughest schedule remaining in the AFC. So lots and lots of games to be played. John Harbaugh mentioned it. The team is not out of the woodwork for the division title yet, but as Ravens fans know, and as we saw this team playing like this, they got no shot to win this division if they don't get their act together. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll focus more on the division title, whether or not it's attainable for the Ravens after falling to the Steelers. They're giving up the division lead as well as a crucial tiebreaker. Something that they can take back in Week 18, but it could be a little too late for that. We'll touch on what this means next for the Ravens next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. All right. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. For example, the Ravens are getting set to deal with the huge stretch of games these next few weeks that could have an impact for the division. But also of note, in the AFC, the Texans and the Chiefs are going to do battle. The Chiefs are currently 4.5-point favorites with a line of about 210 to win on the money line. Of course, if you think the Texans are going to try and grab the AFC South, you may be tempted to go ahead and go on the Texans side. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We are back here with the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher talking Ravens football as the Ravens fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Couldn't believe it when I saw it, but it did happen anyway. Very much a struggle for the Ravens to get the job done. Almost got it done, but they were losing to no avail, unfortunately, which puts them in a bit of a bind. If they want to go to the postseason, they have to win the AFC North, and to do that, they will need to do what they have to do in order to get the job done, and that means beating the Bengals, Patriots, and Packers. Most likely, they have to go minimum 2-1, most likely 3-0 to have any shot about it. But to talk about this more, we have with ourselves Mr. Qadry Ismail joining us in the program.
Oh,
he has made it back. He is here.
Look at that. What's up, Q?
What is going on, Q? What are your thoughts about the game?
Man, I will tell you this. I have had a great whirlwind type of a day when it comes to the celebration weekend for the Super Bowl 35 team, and just seeing all the coaches and the players and, some of the family members who were representing some of my teammates who are no longer with us, and just all of that. And then to obviously put on my analyst hat and put on my squad show hat and look at what really has amounted to just this unbelievable continuation of inconsistent play, just plays that you should have, would have, could have had that you didn't. And because of it, your season is on the brink. On the brink of being over. I know, Kevin, you talked about Lamar Jackson, and it's not all him, but yet at the same time, it is his responsibility, and he's going to take, most of the credit and most of the blame. And so the receivers, running backs, offensive line, bad passes, inconsistent play across the board from this offensive unit is just mind-boggling. And so I think for a team saying that they were in control of their own destiny, they started off 1-5, they clawed their way back into the playoff picture, got back to 500, only to see them drop below 500 yet again. And against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the way they did it defensively, going into this game, Pittsburgh was just stuck in the mud. Like, they had major issues when it comes to, defending the run, major issues as far as even their offense and what is their identity. And so they made mincemeat of what pretty much is a Ravens strength, the Ravens secondary. And they made mincemeat protection-wise from what was supposed to be a strategic upgrade with regards to the defensive front. And so, in other words, there were just glaring weaknesses across the board with this Ravens defense and this Ravens offense. And right now, you are what your record says you are. You're just a below average football team.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in the season, I mean, we're 3+ months in, guys. Like, there's no sugarcoating. I mean, early in the year, we can talk about like, oh, well, this hasn't gone well the first couple of weeks, but they have time. They have 4 games left. And while it's not over until you see the little E eliminated by that team's name, it just feels like they had a real shot here on their win streak, going up against two of their division foes to really pull away and say, hey, what you have seen from us over these last 5 games has been what we have turned our season around into. But in reality, what these past 2 weeks have showed me is that they're more like that team at the beginning of the season than they are the team that we saw in the middle of the year. They're probably somewhere in the middle. But the problem with that is that that's not good enough, because even the team that we saw in the middle of the season had problems pulling away from the Browns when they had Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders playing his first ever NFL snaps. And, the Jets, it took some time. And, the Vikings game was like, all right, you pull away a little bit there, but even still, you're like, all right, what's going on here? And that's against JJ McCarthy. He's barely played any NFL games in his career. So, you start to play. And again, like I mentioned this on that Jaylen Warren touchdown where the Ravens sent the house. And I'm like, look, Aaron Rodgers, while he is not prime, although he looked like prime Aaron Rodgers in some points in this game today with some of the legwork he was doing with the ground game. But I was just like, he's not a rookie. He's not a second-year guy. He has seen every coverage, every pressure look, everything in the book. And when you send that pressure, he's going to see it and find an outlet, because that is schemed up and it leaves guys on islands. And so I'd be okay with that play call if Rodgers hadn't handled the pressure well, which he hadn't really done over the course of the season. But Rodgers was handling pressure while the Ravens couldn't get a sack, and so he finds Warren for a touchdown. So you just have so many glaring issues right now where even if you do find a way to win these last 4 games and sneak into the postseason, win the division, I mean, you got Buffalo staring you down in the wild card round, or Houston, or Kansas City, maybe, like Jacksonville. I don't know. I mean, it's curious now with Daniel Jones and his injury, but that's going to mean for Indy in there. Maybe that opens the door for a team like the Chiefs to make a run and get in the dance. Like, I don't know. But I think it's frustrating with the year the AFC has had, where nobody looks like that top team outside of probably New England at this point. Like, that's the team. But even then, it's like New England and Denver, younger quarterbacks, not a lot of playoff experience, good defenses. But it just felt like the Ravens had a real opportunity here to, and again, I'm sure Bills fans feel this frustration. Maybe even Chiefs fans fight all the rings. I mean, they're doing it with the rings on their fingers. I don't feel bad for them. But like, to me, the Ravens had an opportunity this season, and even if they do make the playoffs, I just don't feel confident that they can go anywhere.
Yeah. How could you feel confident? I mean, this is, again, you just mentioned, they had a good chance. 2 games within the division, pull away. And the Steelers and the Bengals aren't good. I mean, we can call it like we said, but they're beating the Ravens. And this is just one of those things where you got to say, how do you move on from here? How do you push forward? John Harbaugh talked about it. It's not over. The division is still attainable. Let's talk about that right now. Is the division, in your mind, Kevin, still attainable? I want to look at the schedule real quick if I can pull it up. And for the Ravens, we know what the task is for the Ravens. They play the Bengals next in Cincinnati. Then they have a matchup against the Patriots, followed by the Packers. And then they close out with the game against the Steelers. For the Steelers, they have a game upcoming against the Dolphins on Monday Night Football. Then the Lions. Then the Browns, who the Ravens, who just had a big time loss to the Titans, who are the worst team in the league, and then an upcoming match against the Ravens. So do you see a chance for the Ravens to somehow go 2 for 1 and the Steelers go 1 for 2 in those Dolphins, Browns and Lions game? Kevin, I'll start with you. Is there a real chance for the Ravens to come out here and potentially take the division?
Well, I will say that you're not eliminated until you see the E next to that team's name. Yep. So
exactly.
That's my default answer. But realistically, I mean, if I had to predict how the Steelers games will go, I feel like they will beat the Dolphins. I feel like they will lose to the Lions. I feel like they will beat the Browns. And then, if that's 2-1, it puts the Steelers at 9-7 at that point. Yep. So the Ravens, if that's the case, and the Steelers, kind of like we were outlining, I mean, if the Steelers go 2-1 in those games, then the Ravens would have to essentially go 3-0 to set up a game where they are tied record-wise, and then the tiebreakers become all funky. Even if the Ravens went 2-1 and the Steelers go 2-1, you still technically can, be 1 game behind Pittsburgh, and then you set up you win that game. All of a sudden, it's 1-1 head-to-head, and then you have to go default to AFC North record and then common opponent record, and then the tiebreakers get even more funky. But, the Ravens have to play a really good team in Cincinnati that defensively is not that good. In fact, they're pretty terrible, but they now have Joe Burrow back, and Hugh's favorite receiver in the NFL right now, Mitchell Tinsley, is not going to have as big of a role as he had in that week 13 Thursday night game. It's going to be T. Higgins, who we know the difference between having T. Higgins out there versus having another, receiver out there that is not as good as T. Higgins. Then it's New England. Then it's Green Bay. So, look, if they can pull off like a crazy stretch here and just like go absolutely wild, it gives me a lot more confidence heading into that week 18 game. But essentially my worry, if they do that, is they're going to be just dead exhausted heading into that week 18 game. They're going to put everything on the line and fight. And they've essentially had to do that all year, where they started so slowly. They've had to fight and claw the entire season. So is it possible? Yes. Do I think it's likely? Probably not.
It's interesting because, yes, you're talking about all these different scenarios, and I just don't see this Ravens ball club right now. You got to stare at yourself in the mirror, and Marshall Yonda is not coming through that door. It's just the reality. And we can sit here and funny on it, but Lamar Jackson is deservedly so frustrated with the way they have done nothing from an offensive line standpoint. If I was Derrick Henry, I would still be frustrated myself, because I'm like, good God, man, like damn near had 2,000 yards rushing in the conversation with, an all-time record. And now this year, it looks like I'm just some mid-level running back that, is past his prime. He has a ton of life left in his legs, yet because of his offensive line, he can't get past the second level. Did he have a good, strong game? Sure, they rushed for over 200 plus yards, but not that should have been a rat kill. Like, as far as just the dominant opportunity that they just didn't do. And you got to point to the offensive line. When you look at this team, the lack of a finisher, that killer instinct to finish the game, and it's unfortunate, but in the fourth quarter, when Aaron Rodgers needed to get down, they couldn't get to him. And we saw it throughout the game, but Draymond Jones, oh my gosh, he was so I was like, wait a minute, what do we have? The ghost of Odafe Owe come back to haunt us or something? Like, Odafe almost was back. And whether it be roly-poly Oli, or whether it be the vortex of death doing a holding call or an offsides call, or it just it's something after something after something, and it's just so disappointing. Love Alohi Gilman, but I'm like, bro, you got to play over the top when you're talking about going up against Metcalf. Marlon, you are a veteran. They're going to be playing and trying to get those deep shots. They haven't had a 30-yard pass all season long. They only had one. But however many they had in this game, they just like, we're just going to throw it deep because we can. Uzier shows for the first time, like, oh, well, I know I've been playing great, but today I'm going to decide, no, I'm just going to let you go ahead and beat me deep. So they just pick these wrong moments, and that to me is where this team is. It picks the wrong time to show up and show out. So that's the disappointment.
Surely is disappointing. Hopefully, for the Ravens' sake, they, get it together, string some games. Again, it's not possible, it's not likely, but you kind of hope among hope. I wonder if the mood will change if the Ravens were to get the job done against the Bengals, something that, the Bengals put up 30 plus points on the Bills, and I don't see the Ravens stopping that offensive attack, and I don't see the Ravens putting up those points either. So it'll be very interesting to see how this mood changes and what changes could be on the horizon next. In fact, that will be our next topic of discussion Could there be changes on the horizon for this Ravens team if they're unable to get the job done? We'll touch on it here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. What's going on, everybody? We're back here, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Myself, Kevin Oestreicher, Qadry Ismail, talking Ravens football here at the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. In fact, the Locked On Network is the #1 sports network out there. So make sure you guys continue to show support. Subscribe to the YouTube. Go ahead and like and comment wherever you get your podcast in audio form. And we appreciate you guys so much for joining us in a not so great day for Ravens football. We talked about it throughout the show. The Ravens definitely fell a little bit here to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And now questions mount whether or not they can even win the division and make the playoffs. If they don't, could changes be on the horizon for the Baltimore Ravens? We've touched on John Harbaugh's tenure here in Baltimore a lot of the time. Besides that 4 or 5 stretch of games where the Ravens seem to be getting their mojo back, they've since dropped 2 straight games to division foes. The NFL playoffs seems like a impossibility, and now questions will begin to mount whether or not John Harbaugh will be here in 2026. Let's start with Todd Monken and Zachary Orr, the defensive and offensive coordinator. Q, the offense looked like they were unprepared for the 2-minute drill. They looked inept in the beginning of the game. What are your thoughts about Todd Monken and his tenure here? He's gotten some criticism from John Harbaugh personally in the past, and now it looks like the offense is continuing to sputter. Some of that does fall on Todd Monken. What are your thoughts and your chances of him being here next season?
I mean, I think the Steve Bisciotti take everybody to the principal's office end of the year meeting that they'll have down at his place in Florida is where the telltale sign of what he wants to do with his franchise and how he sees things looking moving forward. I think from the aspect of Todd Monken going into this year didn't set the I'm trying to be diplomatic here, yet at the same time, let me just be blunt. Like the offensive line, he didn't pick. He wasn't the guy sitting there in the drafts. He wasn't the guy sitting there saying, yeah, I'm the one that's going to make this thing happen. You're the one that has to, get who you got and say, okay, how can I make this work the best I can? I think that it would be a mistake to do away with him, but I can easily see him being a scapegoat and putting it all on his shoulders. I think Zach Orr, without him having a stud rush in, without him having, a run stuffer, obviously Matabike with his cervical spine issues and potential career-ending, happenings with his body. I think this is, comes down to personnel. Do I have the personnel and the horses to be able to do what I need to do? I can also see him being scapegoated. So I don't like that that optics of it's Todd Monken. I just don't. I think Zach Orr, yeah, I can see where some people might want to look in elsewhere. Obviously, from a players aspect of things, they're the ones that are saying, hey, it's not Zach Orr, it's how we are doing or not doing. But yeah, I think this is there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in this offseason, and I'm very curious what Steve Bisciotti is going to do, because ultimately we could speculate all we want. He could have everybody stay and just be status quo. He could be like, all right, John, who are you going to get rid of? Or he could be like, you know what, John, you're gone. He could say, all right, EDC, you're the one who, brought in all the recipes and, AKA the players. And why? Why'd you do this guy, that guy, this guy? What was it? You're the one who did it. All right, well, you're out. Or he could say, I love you both. I am moving on from the salary cap hit that I'm about to take. I want to move on from Lamar Jackson. He can do all of those above things. We don't know.
Yeah, I guess everything's a possibility. I mean, for me, I think that, if anything, Harbaugh needs to be the one that would go over Lamar Jackson personally. I mean, that's my opinion. I think that with Lamar, if you restructure that deal, you can save anywhere from 20, 30, $40 million in cap space. Now you have to get that deal done. And Lamar, of course, I'm sure that like with the way, because I asked this question with Andrews, I'm like, all right, well, how much pull did Lamar have in this situation? Did they come to him and ask, well, it could be the same thing. Like maybe Lamar just says something about the O-line and is like, this is ridiculous. You need to protect me better than this. I can't do what I know I can do with this offensive line. You need to help me out. And, I wouldn't be shocked if he said that. And I think that he should, because he deserves to have an O-line that can protect him. And, take me back to 2019. You got Yondu, you got Orlando Brown, you got Ronnie Stanley. Like, you got all those guys in there. And, like, that was, like, a year where you saw him. And, like, even last season where you still had to deal with some of the stuff Falele was doing. But, like, the line was just so much more cohesive. And it just feels like, is the loss of Patrick McCary really that detrimental to you? Or is it guys just flat out regressing or not being as good? So there are all those conversations and question marks. So, at this point for Monken, I would be pretty disappointed. And this is not necessarily a Monken thing for me, but I'd be pretty disappointed if they moved off of Monken, but not Harbaugh, because how many times do we have to do this dance of, this guy gets to be the fall guy for Harbaugh or that guy? They've gone through 2 offensive coordinators since Lamar came in here, essentially 3, if you want to add in Marty Morningweg, who was the guy at the back half of Lamar's rookie season. They've gone through 2 D coordinators. Technically, that's assuming Orr stays with Martindale and obviously Mike McDonald, who I know McDonald wasn't their choice. And I know a lot of people are pointing to that as like, hey, maybe that's when this thing all started to go awry. And, the window maybe is if McDonald is the head coach right now, who has 10 wins in Seattle at this moment currently. Is that maybe a change? But I've given the benefit of the doubt for Harbaugh for a long time in terms of like, hey, maybe if they make this change around John Harbaugh, it will get better. But the problem is they're known for being such a great regular season team. And when you can't even do that properly, you've lost everything. Like, when you're talking about the playoff struggles, the saving grace for Harbaugh was, well, but they're such a great regular season team. Now you can't even do that right. And all of a sudden it's like, well, what else do you have if you can't at least get that part correct? So there's a lot of decisions they're going to have to make this offseason, whether they make the playoffs or don't. But, at this point, like if you don't make the playoffs with, and we all talked about how good this roster was, but we all understood the roster flaws like Q you were talking about that were there. And I think for me personally, those roster flaws have crept up and become much more detrimental than I thought they ever would. I expected the O-line to not be great this year, but to have it be this bad, a lot of I didn't expect Rosengarten to regress the way he has. I didn't expect Stanley to have so many up and down moments this year. Even Linderbaum has been up and down a little bit this season. But, my big thing with, moving on from Monken or moving on from Orr, making another coordinator change is like, how many times you're going to, again, Lamar's not 24 anymore, so if you decide to keep forward with Lamar, which I think that they should, if you continue throwing Harbaugh out there as your head coach every single season, and it continues to go though. How much do you need to see essentially before you make that move is my question.
Yeah.
I just think, if I may, like, I just think that, to Kevin's point, when you look at Andy Reid and his time and tenure in Philly, it's not saying that he's some kind of horrible coach. It's just, hey, we got to get over the hump, and they aren't able to get over the hump. So then you bring in a Nick Sirianni, and of course you get over the hump big time. But then at the same time, Andy is like, all right, go elsewhere and still do his thing, and it all works out. I just think that's where, for me, I'm frustrated because, there's a time to say, okay, enough is enough. And that's where this team is at. I think they're at a crossroads.
For sure. And Akil, I want to get back to one of the comments you made regarding Lamar Jackson and potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but, Steve Bisciotti's his team could do whatever he wants. You can, get rid of Harbaugh, can get rid of the OCs, you can get rid of Lamar Jackson. You can do a lot of things if it came down to it. And it came on the crossroads. Now, Lamar Jackson, he's almost 30 years old, so he doesn't really have a lot of effective years as a QB left. Of course, Lamar could do to Aaron Rodgers and play until 42. I'm not sure if he has that in the cards, but regardless, he doesn't have a lot of time left as a QB in this league compared to John Harbaugh, who has a lot of time potentially left as a head coach. I mean, we got coaches coaching until they're in their 80s. So if it came down to it, could you see Steve Bisciotti saying, listen, Lamar, if you're not gelling with John Harbaugh, if you're not fitting with this offense, let's get, you moving. Or if it came down to it, if Steve Bisciotti had to choose between keeping Lamar Jackson or getting rid of John Harbaugh, he'd say, I got a once-in-a-lifetime athlete here, once-in-a-lifetime superstar here. John, you haven't got it done. We'll find someone else to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, two things. Like, are you trying to be the Pittsburgh Steelers of the East and stick to your guns and say, hey, you know what, we want continuity, and so therefore they're going to choose John and Eric over Lamar? Or will he say, hey, look, I got a generational talent. I know that it's just a matter of a few pieces here and there. Let me get a fresh set of eyes as far as general manager. Let me get a fresh set of eyes as far as the head coach. Let me figure it all out, and let's eat. Like, that to me seems like the logical thing to do. But I also think that for Steve, in his own words, in the offseason when he was at the owners meeting and they had the sit down with him, Garrett Downing, the Ravens in-house reporter / news guy, and John and Steve, they're all sitting there, and Steve was like, yeah, this is a hobby of mine. This ain't make or break for me. So does he have an obligation? I think he does, but maybe he also said win now. So they didn't win now. What does that mean that you didn't win now? How does that picture look? What is it going to take to change it so you can win now?
There's a lot. I mean, right now, with everything and how bad the roster weaknesses have been for them, I mean, they need a lot of changes. I mean, I'd be okay if they drafted an offensive lineman with every pick next year. Like, I mean, that's how bad their O-line is right now. And, I think that you owe it to Lamar to put the best roster around him every year, the best 5 to protect him every year. And I don't think that they did that this offseason. And I think that's, it's an insult to Lamar because, I see the joke all the time on social media where it's like, oh man, Lamar Jackson just got sacked 5 times. Oh, here's another safety. Here's another corner. Like, it's like, but that's what they prioritize. It's like they've clearly prioritized the secondary for years and years and years. And like, yes, when you have players like Kyle Hamilton and Marlon, who's had a great Ravens career, all things considered, and Nate's been a great investment, and like you're able to get that, but at some point you do have to, like, again, Hamilton fell into their laps. That was a no-brainer pick that they made. Wiggins was their highest corner on the board. I get it, but again, it's like with Malachi, and I don't have a problem with Malachi. I'm just like, when you start to invest that much in your secondary from a general perspective, I'm not singling out any one player. I'm just saying, like, you have all these first-round picks, signing guys, big contracts. That leaves less for other positions that the Ravens generally at the guard spot, they have not historically signed a lot of those guys to big I mean, there was a whole thing about Zeitler a couple of years ago where it's like they didn't want to pay him the money. So he left, and now they're missing him. And, they couldn't do anything. I mean, Yonder retired, and that is what it is. But, like, once that happened, and then you're like, all right, Zeitler can come in, be that guy. He's not 24 years old, but he can be a solid veteran for you. And then essentially it's like they've been scrambling. I mean, it reminds me essentially a little bit of like, the Ravens losing Ryan Jensen, and they kind of scrambled through. Matt Skura had a good year or two before kind of, he had the injury and that whole situation happened. They tried out McCary there, and that worked until it didn't. And then they finally found Linderbaum. You're like, all right, you're set. So I think now what your plan has to be is you have to find the guy at that guard spot in this draft. Or if they make the playoffs or don't, find the guy, because you've been scrambling a little bit since you had Zeitler gone, but you owe it to Lamar to put the best 5 out there. And so you're saying, yes, has Lamar played up to his standard over the course of the last month? No, of course he hasn't. But at the same time, it's probably really hard when you have a guy in your face every 1.5 seconds or 1 second when you're trying to do what you can do, which is stand in the pocket, sit back, and deliver. And especially when you've gotten hit so much and those hits are taking it. So, I mean, I was scared out of my mind when TJ Watt came from behind Lamar and kind of grabbed him by the leg.
Yes,
And I'm
you
just
saw
like,
that. Oh,
and I'm just like, is he okay? Like, that's the kind of worry I
yes,
live with for Lamar this season, because we
yes.
know that, and we don't know how severe or non-severe I don't even know what leg the injuries are on. So I'm just like, I can't really tell. But that's the kind of worry we're
Yes.
facing with Lamar, of like every hit like that has taken a toll and will continue to take a toll, especially when the O-line hasn't played as well. So, everybody's at fault here. Everybody has a piece of the blame pie, if you want to call it that. The coaching staff, the organization, the roster decision makers, the offensive line, the defense, Lamar, like everybody has a role to play. But I think when you're starting to, and I think Q, you put it really well, where like Lamar hasn't had his best month, but the offensive line has been the far more consistent issue over the course of the season. And when you're thrown out there with that group, it's really hard to play the way you can play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Ravens are going to have a lot of questions to answer if they don't go through with the improbable, turnaround. I think we'll still need to have these questions regardless of the outcome of the season, save for a Super Bowl championship, which seems so far out of reach that it almost sounds ridiculous to say out loud. But we'll see what happens. When we come back, we'll touch more on this, because this is a great conversation to have. And you guys touched on a subject that I think bears a little bit more conversation here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show.
Yeah, so like it's going to show.
All right, we are back here with the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Myself, Kevin Oestreicher, Q, closing out the show here in week 14. Is it week 14? I feel like there's so many games left to go, and at first, and now all of a sudden, it's almost gone. We're in December. Crazy, crazy outcome. Obviously, the Ravens fall short 27-22. Victory snatched away from the refs, but it is what it is. We touch on the negatives with this team, because there are a lot of negatives. And one instance that I think will be great to touch on, Kevin, and I'll start with you, is what the Ravens have done to surround Lamar Jackson with talent. We had this situation similarly with Joe Flacco when he was a Raven. The Ravens got him Anquan Bolden finally. The Ravens, gave him a bit of offensive line. They shifted it up a little bit, moved Bryant McKinney to the left side, got them their championship, and then they snatched Anquan Bolden away. Eerily similar here with Lamar Jackson, where it seems like the Ravens are not paying close attention to what they're doing with Lamar Jackson. They think that he's a Band-Aid, that can, have him out there and just plug away on the defense and make something happen with that. This seems like it's pointing to Eric DeCosta being part of this blame, and he hasn't received a lot of criticism. I've seen it, but we really haven't touched on it throughout. So what is your assessment of Eric DeCosta, Kevin? How would you assess his performance here? We know you've talked about it a little bit on the show already, but could he be a guy that is on the chopping block? Does he deserve a bit of the criticism as well? And how far will we go to see changes for this team if they don't make it to the postseason?
Yeah, well, I certainly think he's on the hook for some criticism here. I mean, I know we've talked about it over the course of the show today and in previous shows as well. But, one thing that I've seen pop up a lot on social media, and obviously, the O-line's a big topic of conversation, the defense, obviously. And I think you made a really good point where it's like, and I talked about this on the Instant Reaction show I did, where it's like that one play where Aaron Rodgers just stood back in the pocket for what seemed like 10 seconds. And then he finds, I think it was DK Metcalf. I think DK torched him. Like he's sitting back there. And I was looking at who was on the field for him. And it was, I think, David Ajabo, Travis Jones, John Jenkins, and Brent Urban. Yeah. And I was like, look, no disrespect obviously intended for any of these guys, but like, you don't have a Micah Parsons. You don't have a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt or, one of those guys, like Q said, can be like your guy that can step up and make those plays. And part of it is like, yeah, guys aren't executing, but part of it is they just don't have the personnel right now, and no one else is walking through that door unless you want to call up Carl Lawson or you think Tavius Robinson is the difference between them making the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl versus not. So it's tough, because another thing is like, I liked the DeAndre Hopkins signing. Their utilization of him is very weird. I just feel like he should be on the field more moments. They're almost treating him like they were Calais Campbell and Justin Houston late in their Ravens tenures, where, those guys, you need to manage their snaps. And I think you should manage D-Hop snaps to an extent, but like, I feel like they're not utilizing him correctly. And I liked that move from Eric, but it just felt like that move was made and then there wasn't really a plan. It was just like, okay, here he is. We're bringing him in. Can he be that Nelson Aguilar type replacement? And they were using Nelly more than they've used D-Hop over the last 2 years. And I think D-Hop's a better player than Nelson. And Nelson had a great Ravens tenure over his 2 years in Baltimore, all things considered. So you look at someone like the Jair Alexander signing. Obviously, I think any of us, assuming he had the potential to get back to who he was, I think any of us would sign him for $4 million, but clearly something was off, and that more so like what's going on with him medically. But yes, the offensive line and the pass rush are the two that I look at, and I'm just like, not a lot was done in the offseason to address either of those positions. And yes, you bring in Mike Green, but it's unfair to rely on a rookie to essentially be the savior. And I talked that pass rush up. I mean, I love the fact that they brought back Kyle Van Noy, who hasn't had as good of a year as I thought he was going to. He's looked, he hasn't popped as much as I thought that he would. Obviously, Tavius going down was a big loss for you. But even in some of those games early in the season when Mike Green didn't have it yet, and I thought we saw some good stuff from Mike in this game. He had a couple of good moves and drew a holding call and whatnot. But even when those early games, it's like you're relying on Mike Green to essentially save you, and to put that on a rookie is not great. Now he's figured it out, but I liked the approach of some of the offseason for Baltimore. I didn't love the approach of others. And I think that this season, if anything, has to be a wake-up call that they need to just scrap their comp pick thing completely. Like, I don't care if it works out in your favor. I don't care if it doesn't. If you're trying to win Super Bowls, I understand that you want to have as many swings as possible with a quarterback on a mega deal like Lamar Jackson. But at the end of the day, if you don't get a 5th round pick, I don't think anybody's going to be losing sleep at night over losing a 5th round pick for signing someone that can be effective and help your team out, even if it's a lesser signing than a guy that's going to sign a $100 million contract. So I do think that they get too caught up in that at times. I thought that happened again this offseason, and it's stuff that does need to change.
Okay, I'm just going to say for the record, ditto. KO just brought it with the offseason awesomeness about the 5th round compensatory pick corniness, and I'm here for it all. Usually he sits there and stiff arms me like Derrick Henry would to a defender when it comes to offseason type information. And I have to and I take it. I'm like, oh God, Kevin, he stiff arms me again. But I don't have to worry about that stiff arm now, because for once he actually became a quarterback and he was in the pocket, and he definitely weaved through the pocket, stepped up, and then, and then I just over the shoulder, boom, on a critical 3rd down in the red zone. But then we were backed up, and then all of a sudden he threw another one, and it was like, bam, because he saw me man to man, and then he knew that he could trust me, and so he got it to me. That's how I'm feeling right about now when we're talking about KO and his observation on what should be done with said front office and their 5th round picks.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, you were on it for sure. I don't know what it is with the Ravens and their infatuation with the 5th round draft pick, just mid-round picks in general. And you have a chance. I mean, they must not feel the heat to get, potentially let go from their lack of performance if they're willing to hold on to these picks for future talent that may not, step up. You need a Kevin Zeitler for the right guard position. You need, a receiver maybe to help out Lamar Jackson. By the way, I feel like Zay Flowers had a resurgent game, but Rashad Bateman, quiet. It just feels like the Ravens just need to get their guys. And if it means trading away a 5th round draft pick, if it means getting rid of a 2nd round draft pick, then you do what you have to do to get it done. So we all agree here that the Ravens' chances of winning the championship are probably out the window. The Ravens' chances of winning the division title are probably out the window. That means the chances of going to the postseason is likely out the window, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a sliver of hope. And it's because of that Ravens-Bengals matchup. We've talked about the Bengals beating on the Ravens on last Thursday, but it seems as though, based on what could happen, if the Ravens were to win, and maybe I'm getting a little too optimistic here. If the Ravens were to win against the Bengals and the Steelers lost and they're tied again, do you still feel like the Ravens have a chance? I just want to get some optimism here. I'll start with you, Q. Do you still think the Ravens have a chance, if the Steelers lose next week and the Ravens win, to go on and win the division?
So you're saying that the Steelers, who play the Dolphins next week,
Yeah.
the Ravens, who play the Bengals, who literally they just put up 30 points in their sleep, those teams.
Yeah.
You're saying that the Ravens, who have struggled defensively and offensively, hasn't shown much offense. Well, okay, maybe Tyler Huntley offense versus the Chicago Bears, but we're no longer talking about Tyler. We're talking about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson since week 1. Gee, let me think. No, no, there's no optimism there.
Oh,
No.
man.
No,
Oh,
no, no.
man.
Wait. There's a slither of optimism here. No, I lost it. Dang it. I thought I had it, but then it slipped. I thought there would be some level of Daniel Falele doing some level of some kind of blocking something, and it just like nothing. I thought for a hot second that I could answer you back, and it would be Roger Rosen. Go, okay, Roger, you just Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, let everybody in the house. I thought for sure that Voorhees was going to be the I'm sitting up in the doggone uh, uh, Super Bowl 35 offensive. So we had an offensive side in the suites and then a defensive side in the suites. And it's in the offensive side of the suites where we're sitting up in there, Edwin Mulatalo. My
Oh,
God, man, that's my guy. I mean, shoot, every time he would jump off sides, I'd go up and headbutt him in the huddle. So that was like a thing of ours. Like he ain't walking through that door. So Roly Polioli and his boy Voorhees of the Vortex of Death. No, there's no optimism. Did Draymond? Yeah, Draymond almost.
yeah.
No, 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 no. He's number 99 all over again, just in a different number, 41. Oh, Buchanan. My guy, brother man, what is up with you and just trying, but you can't. Okay. We don't need the try, but you can't. We need you to try to get a tackle for loss. Not maybe, sort of, kind of. They had a garbage running game and mother of pearl, right when they needed to just get enough, they always got enough. So to recap, no, I just don't see the ability for us to go to Cincinnati and get into a shootout with them, number one, then come back here to the vault and look at who is it? Oh, yeah, that's right, the Patriots. Oh, that team that just is just doing their thing. Yeah, no, I don't. No, no. Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I mean that's a start, but then as Q mentioned, the Ravens do have a heck of a schedule coming up, and so I mean, I guess we're all Tua's biggest fan this week, going and playing Pittsburgh and hoping that Devon Achane can do his thing. So we'll see. I mean, I see F82 Beeman asking, can you compare and contrast Likely's touchdown overturned with Rodgers' interception overturned and how the three elements apply to each? So essentially what they're looking for is catch, 2 feet inbounds, and then a football move. So with Rodgers and his catch, what I saw was him pin the ball against his helmet with one arm, him as he's falling to the ground, right as the knee hits, the ball gets jostled out, or at least it looked like to me it was moving. There wasn't really clear possession, in my opinion. Even if the knee hit the ground with Rodgers having the ball, it was like a bang, bang play. Then the ball got jostled out. So I'm just kind of like, there wasn't really clear possession established there, in my opinion, from Rodgers, which in the case of that would mean the ball is still live because it never touched the ground. And then Buchanan comes up with it. The Isaiah play, their argument is that he didn't make a football move after he caught the ball and got the 2 steps. But as Sam and I talked about earlier in the show, I don't understand how actively extending the football isn't thought of as a football move, or even if he is going and making a move to take his 3rd step and actively in that motion, why is a football move him having to like turn his body or like move the ball with his hands? Like Q, if you were the receiver and you caught that ball and they called that on you, what would your reaction have been?
I would be livid. I would be that whole idea of, control what you can control. Well, move on to the next play, bro. I'd have still been on that play. I mean, that's a touchdown. That's a quality catch. That is a quality like snatch, not just catches like and just and the ability to control it and the guy trying to get it out of my hand. And oh my goodness, that doesn't make any sense to me why they would, overturn it. And those 3 elements were evident in both cases. One should have been, yeah, like give me the ball. Okay, Buchanan, now you are the hero. And the other one should be, okay, Isaiah, you redeemed yourself from last week's fumble before you got into the end zone. So both cases, I I don't know. I'm not one to say, oh, the refs, but in this particular case, oh, the refs, they jacked us and, jacked this opportunity for this Ravens ball club to win.
Sure did. At least in that situation, I think that likely catch should have stood, but it's over now. Can't do anything but move on, and move on we shall. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And know it was a heartbreaking loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there's still 4 weeks left. Anything can happen. I know it's not likely, but anything can happen here. So hopefully the Ravens turn things around. They'll have to do it on quick order in 7 days. They will be in Cincinnati before that Bengals matchup. We'll be definitely talking about it on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you tune in there. And then actually following the Ravens-Bengals contest, we'll be live for a post-game show very similar to this, hopefully under much better circumstances. But for myself, Kevin, and Qadry, thank you guys so much for joining us here on this Locked On Ravens Squad show. And we will see you on Wednesday.